I'm ready for bigger problems now.
My name is John. This is my diary. Never meant for other eyes. Never meant for anyone to read what I once kept buried under aspirin bottles and Sunday smiles. And yet, here it lies, pulled from beneath floorboards that knew more secrets than prayers, recovered from a house that learned to keep its mouth shut. Tonight I write about the pain behind the smile, the headaches, the bright lights that turned the world to static, the way I learned to grin through every pulse of it. Some folks thought I was delicate, maybe touched in the head. Others thought I was putting on. Truth is, I was both and neither. I was learning. The migraines taught me things the strap never could. They showed me how to disappear inside myself, how to build rooms in my head where nobody else could follow. They taught me that pain could be private, could be controlled, could be used. While other boys were learning baseball or how to talk to girls, I was studying the architecture of my own skull, mapping the territory between what I felt and what I showed. Each page tells you how a boy learned to make suffering look polite, how he learned that nobody wants to see your pain. They want to see you handle it gracefully. They want the performance, not the truth. Give them the smile. Keep the scream inside. That's the real lesson. Ma used to say, "Offer it up, Johnny. God's watching." But God wasn't the one I needed to perform for. It was the neighbors, the teachers, the kids at school, the whole damn world that measured you by how well you hid your cracks. And I got good at hiding. Real good. So lean back. Listen close. This diary doesn't live in pictures. It breathes in the space between my thoughts and what they'll start whispering inside yours. Because what I learned between 1957 and 1960 wasn't just about surviving pain. It was about using it, about letting it sharpen you, until you could cut through the world's expectations like a hot knife through butter. The headaches are mostly gone now. But the lessons, those stayed. Those became something else entirely. Something useful. Something nobody saw coming because I'd learned to smile while it happened. Let me show you how it started. Headaches and looking away. South Side, Chicago, Illinois. 1957 to 1960. Chapter 1. The pounding. They called them spells. Started small, a shimmer behind the eyes, a pulse in the temples like someone tapping from inside my skull. The South Side was loud back then. Streetcars rattling, milk trucks coughing, the L screaming overhead. But somehow the noise crawled inside me, got trapped there, bouncing around like a bird in a chimney. I'd be sitting on the stoop, summer heat baking the concrete, and suddenly everything tilted. The world went white around the edges. Smells grew sharper. Coal smoke, fried onions, the vinegar tang from the pickling plant 2 blocks over. Then came the hum, a sound that wasn't a sound at all, more like memory buzzing, like every noise I'd ever heard trying to play at once. First time it happened bad was during Mass. Father Kowalski was droning on about Peter denying Christ, and the stained glass caught the afternoon sun just wrong. Light exploded across my vision, turned the saints into burning shadows. I gripped the pew so hard I left marks in the wood. Ma noticed, put her hand on mine, whispering, "Offer it up." So I did. Sat there while my skull tried to split itself open, while every candle flame turned into a knife, while the organ music became physical pressure against my ears. And I smiled, not because I was brave, because I'd learned that showing pain invited questions, and questions invited attention, and attention invited correction. When it passed, I'd wipe the sweat and pretend nothing happened, because weakness invited correction, and correction came with leather. The old man had no patience for sickness that didn't bleed or break bones. A headache was invisible, unproven, probably made up. "Boys looking for sympathy," he'd mutter, looking for an excuse to lay around instead of being useful. So I learned to be useful even when the world was breaking apart inside my head. Took out trash, ran errands, helped neighbors, all while counting seconds between pulses of pain. Turned suffering into a private thing, a secret kept even from myself sometimes.
Every diary you hear is bought with hours of life. Be among the first to preserve this library. Become a founding patron. Link in the description.
Chapter 2. The Metronome and the Strap. My father's timing was perfect. His belt struck like a metronome, steady, precise, educational. 3 hits for lying, 5 for backtalk, 7 for acting soft. The migraine pulsed in counter rhythm. I learned to measure pain in beats per minute. Internal versus external. Private versus public. The headache was mine, belonged to me. Lived in spaces he couldn't reach. But the strap was his, and he made sure I knew it. He'd finish, light a lucky strike. "That's order, boy." Smoke curled through the kitchen light, while Ma, whispering, whispered a prayer. Sancta Maria, ora pro nobis. Discipline and devotion, 2 sides of the same strap. The interesting thing was how the 2 pains started talking to each other. When the migraine came, the memory of the strap felt distant, almost quaint. And when the strap sang, the headache would retreat, like it was giving the stage to a different performer. I started to understand that I could hold multiple kinds of suffering, keep them organized, use one to manage the other. Some nights, after the house settled, I'd lie awake counting ceiling cracks, promising myself I'd never flinch again. That vow felt holy, more holy than anything Father Kowalski preached, more sacred than Ma's rosaries. It was a covenant between me and pain, an understanding that we'd work together instead of against each other. The old man thought the strap was teaching me obedience. Ma thought her prayers were teaching me faith. Neither understood what I was really learning. How to build a fortress inside myself, where nobody else could enter. How to smile at the world, while somewhere deep inside, I was taking notes. Tommy Kowalski asked me once, after seeing me wince at a particularly bright afternoon, "Don't that hurt?" "Sure," I said, "but so does lots of things. You get used to it." "I couldn't," he said. "I know," I told him. And I did know. I could see it in him, in all of them. That softness, that inability to swallow pain and keep moving. It made them predictable, manageable, easy. Chapter 3. Flickers. By 13, the headaches turned visual. Tiny lightning bolts darting across my sight. I'd blink and lose seconds. Once, walking home from St. Albert's, I opened my eyes to find I was already on my porch, key in hand. No memory of the blocks between. Like someone had edited out the middle of a film reel. Teachers called it daydreaming. The old man called it laziness. But I started to realize those gaps weren't emptiness. They were quiet. Inside them, the world's noise stopped. And in that quiet, I could see people. Their tics, their patterns, the things they didn't say. Pain sharpened my vision. That was the first real lesson. During one of those flicker states, I watched Mrs. Chen from across the street. Really watched her. Saw how she checked the sidewalk before stepping out. How her eyes darted to windows. How she held her purse like it might get snatched any second. Fear. Constant, low-level fear. And I understood that fear was a frequency. Something you could tune into if you learned the right way to listen. Mr. Patterson washing his car. 3 times a week, same ritual, same obsessive circles with the chamois cloth. Control. Desperate need for control in a world that wouldn't give it to him. He probably didn't even know that's what it was. Just felt compelled to keep washing, keep polishing, keep trying to make something perfect. The Brennan kids fighting in their yard. Not play fighting, real anger, real hurt. But nobody stopping it because that's just how kids were. Neglect dressed up as freedom. Parents inside with the door closed, letting nature take its course. I collected these observations like Ma collected prayer cards. Filed them away in the organized spaces of my mind. The rooms the headaches had taught me to build. Every person became a study, a puzzle to solve, a pattern to recognize. Sister Margaret thought my staring was devotion, attention to her lessons. But I was looking past her, cataloging the way she touched her crucifix when she was nervous, the way her voice changed when she talked about certain sins. Everyone had tells. Everyone broadcast their weaknesses if you knew how to receive the signal. The migraines were my antenna. They hurt like hell, but they tuned me to frequencies other people missed. Chapter 4. The Dog. It happened behind the garage in 59. A stray, mangy, ribs showing, one ear torn half off. It barked at every car, every footstep, every breath of wind. The noise cut through my skull like wire through cheese. I'd been fighting a 3-day migraine. Light felt like needles, sound felt like hammers. And this dog was both at once. I'd tried everything. Covered my ears, closed my eyes, retreated to the basement. But the barking followed, echoed, multiplied inside my head, until it wasn't one dog anymore, but 100, all of them screaming directly into my brain. When the dog started up again, something in me snapped. Not loud, just a click, like a switch flipping, like deciding to close a door that had been banging in the wind. I found the old shovel, the handle slick with oil, familiar weight, good balance. The motion was fast, efficient, almost kind. I didn't hate the dog. I wasn't angry at it. I was just solving a problem, restoring order, making the noise stop. The silence afterward was absolute, perfect, like the world had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. I stood there, shovel in hand, dog at my feet, and felt something I'd never felt before. Not guilt, not shame, but completion. Like finishing a math problem correctly, getting the answer that made everything balance. I remember kneeling, touching its neck, feeling warmth fade beneath my palm, watching the light go out of its eyes, which weren't accusing or afraid, just empty, like someone switching off a lamp. Simple, final, quiet, no guilt, only the relief of order restored. Later, I buried it beneath a lilac bush. Took my time. Did it proper. Tatted the earth down smooth. Even whispered something. Not a prayer exactly, but an acknowledgement. Then I went inside, washed my hands, and told Ma the dog must have run off. She said, "Then pray it finds peace." I did. For both of us. Though I already knew where its peace was. 3 feet under lilac roots. Where it couldn't bark anymore. Couldn't disturb the order of things. That night, no headache. First time in weeks. Like my head knew the problem was solved and could finally rest. Chapter 5. Ma's Hands. She tried. Cold cloths pressed to my forehead. Vicks rubbed across my chest. The house smelling of camphor and boiled potatoes. She called it God's test. I called it endurance practice. 2 different names for the same curriculum. When I winced, she'd whisper, "Offer it up, Johnny." Suffering cleans the soul. So I did. Offered it up until the offering became habit. Pain became currency. Endurance, virtue. The headaches were my confessional. Every pulse said, "Hold still. Smile. Learn." Ma's hands were always cool, even in summer. She'd lay them on my temples, her rosary beads clicking soft against my cheek, and murmur prayers in that mix of English and Polish that sounded like music even when I didn't understand the words. Sometimes it helped. Sometimes it didn't. But I learned to act like it always helped, because that's what she needed. "You're such a good boy, Johnny," she'd say. "So patient with your suffering." Patient. That's what they called it when you'd learn to eat pain without showing teeth. I'd nod, smile through another wave of nausea, let her think her prayers were working. Meanwhile, I was doing my own calculations. How much sympathy could I extract from this? How long could I stretch the performance before it became suspicious? She made me soup. Chicken broth with carrots so soft they dissolved on your tongue. She'd sit with me, stroke my hair, tell me about the saints who'd suffered and been rewarded with heaven. St. Lawrence on the gridiron, St. Sebastian with his arrows, St. Lucy with her eyes plucked out. All that suffering, all that pain, all rewarded eventually. But the reward was always later, always somewhere else, always in another world. I started to think, what about rewards now? What about compensation in this life, not the next? The dog had taught me something about that. About taking action, solving problems, creating peace through decisive intervention. Ma's prayers asked for relief. I'd learned to provide it myself. Chapter 6. The Mask at School. By high school, I'd perfected the look. Eyebrows lifted, grin set just shy of smug. When the light stabbed, I laughed it off. When nausea rose, I cracked a joke. Teachers called me the polite one. Girls said I was harmless. Inside, the hum kept time. Each compliment another layer of plaster over a wall ready to split. I learned that masks weren't lies. They were tools. And tools were power. If you smiled long enough, people mistook it for goodness. If you nodded in the right places, they handed you their trust. That's when I understood. The world doesn't want truth. It wants performance. Give them the show they expect, and they'll never look behind the curtain. I joined clubs, not because I cared about photography or debate or the Key Club, but because participation meant visibility, and visibility meant reputation, and reputation meant access. Teachers trusted me with keys to supply rooms. Coaches let me stay after to lock up the gym. I was helpful, reliable, always available, never complaining. "John's such a good kid," they'd say. Polite, respectful, real mature for his age. Mature. That's what they called it when the strap and the headaches and the dog under the lilacs had aged you past childhood into something else. Something that understood how the world really worked. The girls were easy to read. They wanted safety. Wanted someone who listened. Who didn't push too hard. Who seemed gentle. So that's what I gave them. Walked them home. Carried their books. Laughed at their jokes. Never went further than they wanted. Never scared them. Built reputation as the nice boy. The safe choice. The one their mothers approved of. But I was learning other things too. How far you could push before someone noticed. What you could say that sounded like a joke but landed like a threat. How to isolate someone in a crowd. Make them feel like you were the only one who really saw them. Techniques. Methods. Tools. The headaches came less often now. Or maybe I just stopped noticing them. They'd become part of the background noise. Like the L, or the factory whistles. When they flared, I'd use them. Play sick. Get sent home early. Use the time alone to think. To plan. To practice. Sister Margaret nominated me for an award. Outstanding Character, it was called. I accepted it with perfect humility. Thanked God and my parents and the school. Inside, I was laughing. They were giving me awards for the mask, for the performance, for the lie. And they'd never know the difference. Chapter 7. The Quiet After. By 1960, the headaches dulled into whispers. They didn't vanish. They just learned patience. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear the L groan past and feel that same inner rumble answering. A signal. A rehearsal. The dog's grave was gone under weeds by then. Probably forgotten by everyone except me. Ma's rosary hung faded above my bed, beads worn smooth from decades of desperate prayers. The old man's strap had finally cracked, split down the middle from overuse, discarded in the trash. But the lesson stayed. Endurance, order, silence, smile. I graduated high school, voted most likely to succeed by classmates who didn't know what success I had in mind. College wasn't in the cards. Money was tight. And besides, I'd learned everything I needed from the streets. The strap, the pain, the silence. Book learning was for people who needed to be told how the world worked. I already knew. The migraines still flicker, softer now, like messages from beneath the floorboards. Sometimes I think they're not headaches at all anymore, but something else. A frequency, a warning system, a way of knowing when something needs correcting, when the order's been disturbed, when action is required. Next year I'll trade the aspirin for cologne, the boy's grin for a salesman's smile. I've got a job lined up. Nothing special, just sales work. But it's a start. A way to practice the tools I've been sharpening. People will start shaking my hand and never notice what I'm really learning to hold. The dog under the lilacs taught me something important. Problems can be solved. Noise can be silenced. Order can be restored. And nobody has to know as long as you're careful. As long as you smile. As long as you maintain the performance. I'm 18 now, legal adult, free to move, to work, to become whatever I'm going to become. The boy who learned to swallow pain is gone. What's left is something harder, something sharper, Something the world will welcome with open arms because it looks so much like what they expect. I've been thinking about suits lately. How a good suit changes everything. How people treat you different when you're dressed right, when you smell right, when you carry yourself right. First paycheck, I'm getting a suit. Dark gray, maybe. Something professional. Something that says trustworthy. And I've been thinking about what comes after that. About how the tools I've learned, the mask, the smile, the patience, the understanding of pain and fear and control, how those tools might apply to bigger problems, more complex situations, greater needs for order. The headaches whisper at night, soft as Ma's prayers, steady as the old man's strap. They whisper about possibilities, about what a young man with the right skills, the right mask, the right understanding of human nature might accomplish, about how far you can go when everyone thinks you're harmless, about how many problems might need solving. Order remains, but the nature of that order is about to change, about to expand, about to become something the South Side has never seen before, because nobody will see it at all. They'll just see the smile, shake the hand, trust the mask. And by the time they understand what they're really looking at, it'll be too late. The dog taught me that. The quiet after the noise. The peace after the solution. The satisfaction of order restored. I'm ready for bigger problems now. End of entry 4.
Ah. I trust you enjoyed this glimpse into a most curious diary. If so, leave behind a small token of your delight with a like, and do consider joining our circle by subscribing. And remember, ring the little bell, and you shall be the very first to know when another diary or a fresh entry emerges from the shadows. And if a whisper stirs in your mind, a thought, a riddle, perhaps a name of someone whose secrets you would dare to uncover, leave it for me below. I read them one by one. And who knows, your wish may guide my hand to the very next diary I choose from my collection.